be like, all right, so what's up with you now? And I'm like, oh, I'm raising money for my next record. He's like, well, how far do you have to go? I'm like, well, I've raised 12. I'm hoping for 20. He's like, well, how's 10? I was like, $10? That's really nice. Thank you so much. That helps even know. 10,000. I was like, what?
You are now listening to the Music Business Dreams podcast, brought to you by KDMR Music.
Yo, what's up, guys? This is Brandon. I'm the host of the Music Business Dreams podcast, and I want to say thank you and welcome to episode 7. So you just heard Cheryl B. Engelhardt, today's guest, telling me how she had one person on her email list volunteer to give her $10,000 towards her album release goal. And so you're going to hear more from her in just a little bit. But first, I want to say thank you for making last week's episode such a success. Our interview with Brian Kidd got the most downloads of any podcast on a single day last week. And so obviously, if you guys missed it, you can check it out just by going back to the archive. But Brian talked about how he got his start as a mix engineer, how he had the confidence to just reach out to artists that he was interested in working with, and how that has served him well ever since. But again, today we're talking to Cheryl Engelhardt, and I talked to her about how she raised over $40,000 from an email list with less than 2,000 people on it. So I'm really excited to bring that interview to you guys. Before we get into the interview, I just want to say, if you love the show, go ahead and subscribe. We're talking to new people each and every week. We talk to artists, we talk to managers. I've got some amazing interviews coming up that you are not going to want to miss. So go ahead and click that subscribe button, whether you're on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever. Save us. And if you love the show, give us a rating, leave a review, and even more importantly, share it with a friend. All of that helps. And if you want to join the conversation after this podcast is done, then join us in the Indie Club. That is our private community on Facebook of artists and other music industry professionals. And we talk about different things that are going on in the industry. We share articles with each other. We share our music with each other and give each other constructive feedback and criticism. And it's just a great place to network and meet other like-minded people who are going to help you on your road to success. So if you want to join the Indie Club, you can join at kdmr.us/Indie Club, or you can just look in the description below or the show notes, and I will leave those links there. So without further ado, let's get into the interview with Cheryl Engelhardt. All right, guys, our next guest on the Music Business Dreams podcast has done a little bit of everything from touring the country in her band. She's composed music for television and film commercials. She even is the founder of InTheKeyOfSuccess.com, where she helps to coach other artists to successful music careers. So without further ado, welcome our next guest to the Music Business Dreams podcast, Miss Cheryl Engelhardt.
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. How you doing today?
Good. That was such a nice, concise intro there. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks again for agreeing to be on the show. So for those who may not know you, why don't you give us a brief introduction?
You did such a good job. I kind of feel like that was a nutshell. The slightly larger nutshell is I went to college for marine biology and found myself taking a lot of arts electives, so I ended up being like, oh, music, that's interesting. But my first job out of college was actually scuba diving for the government, doing water quality research. And surprisingly enough, I got bored. And a friend of mine knew that I also, had played the piano forever and liked to compose music, so he asked me to write some music for a short video that he was doing for a website. And so I did that, and I kind of never went back to science. And that led to a job at an ad agency, like a jingle house, writing music for commercials. And there's a beautiful studio there. So I put together my band and started playing out just to kind of practice for recording. And I was like, oh, gigging, that's interesting. I like this. And so I started touring and toured all over Europe and been to Switzerland 7 times and played festivals there and did that whole thing, and left the ad job, of course, to go do that, and came back and decided that I really missed scoring. I really liked working with picture, like enhancing a story, telling a story with my music beyond just writing a song and telling the story through the song. So I decided to go freelance. So I started writing for different music houses as a commercial composer, and also taking on some indie films, and kind of wearing a bunch of hats and just taking anything that came to me. I went through a whole phase of yes, where I said yes to anything, whether it was playing at a ski resort to composing music for College Humor, which I did a whole bunch of and really enjoyed doing that. So sort of took a while to figure out exactly how to brand myself and how to talk about what I do and what I actually wanted to do, instead of just saying yes to stuff that showed up. And that ended up turning into, in the key of success, I got asked to speak at some music conferences and realized that I had something to say, and so I got some training as a career coach just so I could get better at saying that and listening to what other people were blocked with. And so it's kind of all fell into place over many years, I would say. So now I sort of split my time between creating some content for musicians, whether that's my podcast, Key Conversations, or my blog, or paid courses where I sort of dig into topics specifically around communicating, like email marketing for your fan list, kind of a whole thing on pitching and that sort of stuff. So I'm always creating content. Right now I'm literally sitting in front of a film score that I have a couple hours deadline, and it's a feature film I'm really excited about. So I also do a lot of composing for choral groups, and a little less touring now, like a lot less touring. Sort of found my groove as a writer. So that's kind of the expanded nutshell, I would say.
Okay, cool. So when I speak to artists who, are multidisciplinary, or they do more than one thing, I always ask, for a creative, what is it about one versus the other that you like, especially when you continue to do both? So you said you do composing for film. You said you like that allows you to work with pictures, but then you're also writing your own music, and you package it as albums and you sell that way. What about those two things keeps you going with them?
Yeah, that's a great question. But before I answer that, do you talk to musicians that only do one thing? I've never met a musician that only does one thing.
So I've talked to a lot of musicians who feel like they have to package themselves one way, and then we uncover that they do this other thing, and you're like, well, why don't you put this out there as well? And then they do, and they find success, and it's like, oh, wow, I didn't know this was available as an avenue for me.
Yeah, I mean, every musician I talk to that has it going on, meaning that they're making it work, or they see what their path is. And even some famous musicians, like, Sarah Bareilles, she does the pop thing, but now she's writing for Broadway, and I haven't met a single musician who's fairly fulfilled and on a pretty good path that isn't doing more than I'm not great with double negatives, isn't doing more than one thing. So yeah, absolutely. And I think when you kind of find your groove, they go hand in hand. So for me, I feel like I'm relevant as a music career coach or, speaker or whatever, because I have the hands-on experience. I'm not just some ex-record label exec that can't figure out what to do now. Like, I'm actually in it. I'm trying to get gigs. I'm booking commercials. Signing with licensing companies. I'm writing songs. I'm working with producers. I'm following the monetization. I'm in it. And I think that my music creation feeds into the musician resources I'm creating, and vice versa. So the more I create for musicians, I share that with my fans too. So I have two lists, one of musicians and one of fans, and a lot of times I'm finding that the content is the same. Like, I don't need to be two different people. I cater to two different worlds, two different worlds of people. One is musicians looking to further their careers, and one is my fans that are following mine. But in the end, it's me. So I feel like, I teach, I do a lot of different things. There's no reason to hide anything. And I think it's you don't need 9 different websites to show all the different things you do. If you're a guitarist and a composer, great. Those are going to help each other. So that was just a thought when you're like, are there musicians out there that only do one thing? I don't even know if that's a thing.
Right.
So to answer your question, I think for me, and this stems from way early on. Like I said, I was bored when I was scuba diving, but I get bored easily. I have what I call occupational ADD. Like, I can work on producing a song and writing lyrics and going back and forth with a producer for a couple of days, and then I'm like, okay, now what? And I saw myself go in waves when I was touring a lot. Like, I would get into, like, business mode, and I would be pitching, and I had my Excel sheets, and I was keeping track of who was saying yes and who was responding and who I followed up with. And, you know, I used to get scared because I'd be like, oh, my God, I have no desire to sit down and write anything on that. I don't want to sit at my piano right now. Right. But I realized that those, you know, those waves are natural, and they come and go, and you sort of, I definitely like to feed into them. If there's no other work to do, I think, you know, when you have to compose, you have to sit down and write. Like, it's your job, so don't wait for inspiration to hit at the same time. In the same breath, I can say, you know, when I'm feeling like it's in tour mode and I'm in, like, organizational mode, like, I got to ride that wave. And I think that keeps me interested. It keeps me excited about what's next. It keeps me looking forward to, like, different tasks. So that's just me. I get bored. So there's no way I could only do one of these things, composing, songwriting, or the musician resources. So that works for me. I know that doesn't work for a lot of people, but most of those people are in their day jobs. So, right. Which is fine. Which is, I mean, totally great. You just sort of have to know yourself. And it took a while for me to figure that out. And I had a coach that really pointed out, like, you have to play into what works for you instead of looking at you get bored easily or you like to do a lot of things as a fault. So that really made a difference for me.
Yeah, it's definitely something that sets you apart, you know. And we had a guest on episode 4, I believe, who was saying, you know, if you own all the things that you do and you're able to articulate why it's valuable to someone, then they'll come to you for all those things as opposed to trying to find 4 people to do 4 different things. They'll come to you for all 4 of those things. And it makes it easier on whoever the business owner is or whoever it is that's the stakeholder looking for, you know, help solving those problems.
Yeah, especially, I think that's really true in most cases. I would say, like, right now I'm scoring this film, and it's a low-budget indie film. They had a decent budget for music, but they didn't have budget for music supervisor, and there are 2 places where I was like, I think a song would be really great here. And they're like, can we tack on music supervisor, and can you reach out to your indie music community? And so that's kind of, and I've done that before for lower budget films, and, you know, I think that, you know, knowing the legal side of things a little bit and being able to sort of navigate those has helped me. I do know that in the commercial world that if you say, hey, I do death metal and I do jazz and I do orchestral and I do poignant piano, like that's actually not appealing. People in that world, and I don't know if it's the same for TV necessarily, but they like to know who the go-to jazz guy is or the go-to pop person, right. Which, you know, it's kind of a bummer to have to pigeonhole yourself, but I've learned that when I'm pitching to write for a commercial or to a music house, that is one area that I would say is the exception, where it's really good to say, you can count on me for this, this, and this. Like, I am piano, pop, poignant, you know, vocals. Give me your, you know, diaper commercials and Bounty and Home Goods, basically absorbent materials. And I'm, you know, and it's, you know, I'm not going to be getting like a huge GMC, like hard rock truck commercial anytime soon, even though I have produced stuff like that. But that's just not how that industry works. So if you know your industry and you know who you're catering to, and you know, okay, they're going to want me to be a one-stop shop to play guitar and to mix and to do all this, like, great. But I think you need to do a little research ahead of time so you know how to, like, present yourself and pitch yourself.
Right. So what's interesting about your backstory is it seems like you kind of found your earlier success in music licensing. And typically you hear it the other way around, like people kind of discover licensing as an afterthought. So how did you come across that world, and what tips would you have for someone who wants to get into that?
Yeah. Well, early on, the very first like official job I got after I left scuba diving and did some freelance composing was a friend of mine hooked me up with a post-production house in New York City. So they were the people that edited the commercials, so it's got the footage and everything. So I was an assistant there and like worked in the mailroom for about 9 months before they introduced me to the jingle house I ended up working at for 3 years. So in that 9 months, I watched how editors pull their favorite tracks from their favorite CDs just to have some music, even though that wasn't going to be the music that ended up on the commercial. So I was like, oh, if they have my music, then they can just pull that in. And every once in a while, a client will come in and develop what we call temp love, meaning they love the temp track and they either can't afford it because it's some huge artist because they just pulled their, you know, a song off their AC/DC record or whatever. Right. or they go out and they try to get the license for the song. So I was like, well, if my song is on there and they have Temp Love, and it's really easy. They just ask me and I say yes.
Right.
So I would give my CD to all of my editor friends, and I actually started to pursue editing companies to say, hey, just so you know, I'm a musician in the area. I'm in the ad world, and, you know, my records are in line with that kind of ad music. So here's an instrumental CD. I would, like, master my instrumentals as well as the vocals and run it to a CD so they would have both. And I would, like, walk around to editing houses. And that actually worked in L.A. once. I got one of them put a song on a track. I have a blog post about it. And I was watching The Office series finale, and commercial came on for Footlong Hot Dog. And I was like, oh, my God, that's my song. I was like, wait, I didn't find anything. And so I had to track down, like, which editor had put it in the commercial, because it just basically the music fell through the cracks. Like, it was no one's fault, but I ended up having to follow up, and I asked for, they were like, oh, we'll send you $500, and I ended up asking for $15,000, and they said yes. So I learned the value of my music pretty quick. But I tell the whole story. It's a really good story about copyright and like how to be great with people even when you think you're being screwed. A lot of musicians think they're going to get screwed. I just was talking to one yesterday who was like, I'm not putting any music up on my website until I've copyrighted these with the government, and I'm really afraid. I'm like, why are you afraid of that? Because there's digital timestamps. There's so many reasons to not be afraid. And you also have, like, that song that was on that commercial wasn't copyrighted because it was a single, and I just hadn't gotten around to it. But I threw it on that CD, and my awesome lawyer who advised me on the whole thing said, yeah, you have 3 months to copyright it. You can file a copyright, but like, you released it, it's like clearly yours. Like, it just wasn't even an issue. But so long story short, I just pounded the pavement early on. I also talked to there's a radio company that I worked with that had a couple connections at MTV. So he kind of like, I asked him if he would introduce me. He did. I got some songs early on like All My Children. No, that's not MTV. That's Road Rules and Real World and all of those, which, they don't pay upfront licensing, but they do really well international royalties because there's reruns of those shows all the time. And
right.
So that was sort of fun. I signed a deal for a couple of songs. I pursued like a boutique licensing publishing company, and the deal is really terrible. They take a lot of like all the publishing. It's like not a deal I would sign now, but they got me one of my first ones. That was All My Children, and a couple other like trailer music things. So it was a lot of pounding the pavement, just reaching out to people. I kept a really, really detailed Excel sheet of who I was reaching out to, who said yes, who I had to follow up with, and that was kind of how I did it. Yeah.
Nice. So I know I read, or I was listening to the intro episode on your podcast, and you talked about and you talked about it briefly just a second ago, how you kind of get bored in careers. And so you kind of took a step back to reevaluate what you were doing musically or why you were doing it. And you kind of came back, reemerged out of the cocoon as an artist coach. So can you talk a little bit about that transition and kind of how it's led to where you are today?
Yeah, so, wow, it's been 5 years. So 5 years, I was touring. I had been touring for 6 years. And then 5 years ago, I was still touring, but I got my first feature film, which really needed me to be like in one place in my studio writing. That same month, I got married, and then 3 months later, my dad died. So it was like a lot going on in my life at that time over those, like, I would say 6 months. And, my dad was like my cheerleader. He played the upright bass, and he was like always had really great comments for my music. So I sort of felt like I lost my audience. And so I went in like a deep funk, and I was like, forget it, I'm going back to science. And that's when I got this coach. And first of all, he told me to go do my e-course. The only thing I had product for musicians that I had come out with at that point was this 6-week e-course to sort of restart your career when you hit a plateau. Ironically enough, my coach was like, go do this, 5 weeks, do it as it's meant to be done, like 100%, do all the exercises and everything. And I couldn't, I was like, this is dumb. Like, he's like, no, do it. And then you'll also see if it's actually valuable or not. And I was like, okay, fine. And I did it. And it like got me super clear. I was like, all right, it's not about my dad anymore. I'm shifting why I'm doing it. I think for a while I was touring to like be cool in his eyes, be cool to like high school. I was like not cool in high school. And like, I really think there was like a cool factor about what I was doing and like the motivation behind it. So when I got that motivation was no longer available, I rediscovered like what I really love and sort of recreate my purpose, which was I'm all about partnerships and self-expression. And as long as I'm doing something where I get to be in partnership and I get to be fully self-expressed, and I'm also providing the space for someone else to discover how to do that, then, music is one way to do that. But I felt like, okay, like let's keep going. So that took about 6 months to really come back around and I applied to some science jobs. I really was like, all right, let's go. And as soon as I started applying to some science jobs, I got 2 film scores and a commercial, and like it was like the universe was saying like, no, don't give up yet. I got asked to play at this huge festival, like Purple Live, I hadn't done in a while. So I was just like, okay, things are still showing up, and it's like in spite of me. So that's when I realized that like the course I created like makes a difference, and I should probably do more of that, because if other people are struggling like I was, then. And I looked around, there's a lot of courses on like Facebook marketing for musicians and how to get your song in licensing. And, there's very like specific things out there that are all really expensive. And then there's courses and then there's all the conferences, which tend to be pretty generic. Like they're inspiring, but you walk away and you're like, okay, what do I do now? So I really wanted to sort of shift what was out there and provide some other affordable ways to kind of dig into who you are, what you're committed to, what your values are, because I think that's what fans are going to get attracted to the most if you're aligned, and how to reflect that in your branding and your website and like how you speak and how you pitch. So I started practicing when I was preaching, and stuff started just to show up, and I kind of reestablished what my goals were. And so yeah, that was 4 to 5 years ago started that whole mission to really create in the key of success and have it be not just a side thing, but have it be like a valuable thing. And then, I've been working on how to find the balance between creating content for that and then also creating the songs and the scores and things. And I'm happy to say that I think I'm finally in the past couple of months really settling into a balance that feels good and keeps me on my toes and not bored, but also isn't overwhelming, and still providing value for the directors I work with or the musicians I work with or whoever it is that is receiving whatever it is I'm creating.
Nice. And so how'd you find that balance in the last couple of months?
I started asking for help. So I often have an intern, and that really helps out a lot. I work with my alumni. So I went to Cornell, and they have a 2-week program a couple times a year during their breaks where someone that is interested in your field can come work with you for a couple weeks. So I started doing that and realized that it was really valuable for them, and I was also getting a lot of stuff handled that I started taking notes on things I just didn't want to do. Like, might have been taking notes on my podcast, like writing the notes for podcast episodes, or creating graphics for some social media posts, and stuff like that some people are really, really talented at. I feel like I wouldn't say I'm super talented at it. I just have done it myself for so long that I kind of got into the swing of it, and I was like, oh, when someone else is doing this, I have more time to write this choral piece for a 250-person choir, because that's way cooler than creating an Instagram graphic. So,
right.
So asking for help was one thing that helped the balance. I got, last year I took a program that was really expensive but totally worth it to really figure out how to technically integrate my courses with my email list and stop manually automating, if that makes any sense. I was like registering people one by one instead of just having the systems all sort of work together. When someone goes to the website, they can pay for the course and get signed up, and then they get added to the email list so that they know about the course updates and blah, blah, blah. So I really dug into the technology of that. So I think, putting some structures in that supported what I wanted really gave me a lot of time. It took a lot of time up front, so I really, really focused on that for a while. I wasn't doing any composing for like 4 months while I was setting all that up, but now I'm really grateful that those systems are in place. And I started meditating, which sounds like so like woo-woo, hippie-dippy, but I got this like free app called People Habit, and I was like, let's just do like 5 minutes a day. I was reading all this stuff about like mindset, and I struggle with anxiety a lot, and I think it's because of the unpredictability and my husband's a mountain guide, so like there's a lot of unpredictability there. There's just like a lot of, it keeps me not bored, of course, right? There's the theme. But January of last year, I started meditating 5 minutes a day, and I think it was last September, I traveled a lot, so I was like, I'm good. That was nice. And like September, I was like a mess. I was the hottest mess I've ever been in my life. Last September, I was like, okay, I'm going to go back to meditating every day. So since last October, I haven't skipped a day. And I think that's got to have played some role in like waking up and just taking 5 minutes for myself and like stretching a little bit and then getting in instead of like looking at my phone and getting stressed right off the bat. I feel like that's got to help. So putting in routines and structures, I think, was really good, especially if you work from home and, don't have the normal structure of get up, travel, go to work, lunch hour, blah, blah, blah. So I've been a lot better about that and writing in a little journal in the morning and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I think that's something that we don't talk about enough as far as like just whether you're a freelancer or, like you said, anyone who's really just working from home, that's something that you do miss is that structure, right? Like, I have a daughter, so it's a little bit easier for me to have that routine because I've got to take her to school every day, right? But it's summer vacation now, so it's like I can find myself, I'll wake up at 10 or I'll wake up at 11, and it's like, wait, what happened? Where'd the time go? And then all of a sudden you feel like you have to crush everything into this 3-hour window. So I think just establishing that routine, whether it's setting an alarm, all right, I'm going to get up, I'm going to meditate, or I'm going to go to the gym, just having something is okay. Every day I do this the same way is very helpful when everything else that you do is so unpredictable and kind of doesn't run on a schedule. So I think that's cool.
Yeah, that's so true. The guys in my band used to be like, why is your car so clean all the time? I'm like, that is the one thing I can control in my life right now. So I would have like the cleanest car and they could not understand it. And like everything else is a mess. Like I don't know where the next paycheck is coming from. I don't know, like what's happening with this. And I know, so the things that I can control, I started really honing in small things like that. Like I can control what time I wake up. I can control what time I eat lunch. I can control how clean my car is. And I think those sort of add to my peace of mind when everything else is unpredictable, which is the nature of this business. Even the jingle house I used to work for, like, 12 employees, a big company, gorgeous space in New York City. The owner would say to me, he's like, we don't know where we're getting our money in 6 months. Like, that's just the nature of the music, advertising, film industries are, it's not predictable. And so you kind of got to just be like, okay, that's how this is, and then stop fighting it, and then put things in place that will support and kind of counterbalance that unpredictability. So yeah, my car is often very clean.
Well, that's good. So the way I learned about you was a couple of weeks ago. I was on the CD Baby blog, and I read this article about how you used your email list to generate like $40,000 in revenue. And so I was like, wow, I've got to have this lady on the podcast. We've got to talk about this. So I guess let's talk about it. How were you able to accomplish that?
Yeah, that was something that was really magical, but I didn't know it at the time. I sort of thought I was just doing what you're supposed to do with an email list. So my email list at the time was probably around 1,000 people. So not a ton of people, but also like a little bit more than just friends and family. Mm-hmm. And I had been touring, and most of the people on my list I had gotten there from performing live. So they, signed up at a live show. So when I was set out to do my third album, the first one I sort of did on my own. The second one, I was working at the composing house, so I was able to do it in the studios there and work after hours. But the third one, I was not working anywhere. I didn't have any more savings, so I was like, I need to raise some money. And I had started to see things like Kickstarter, and I was like, I don't want them to take any of my money. So I looked at how Kickstarter worked and, the different levels and awards or rewards or perks or whatever you want to call them. And so I ended up just building on my website that idea, and I created PayPal buttons for I had like 5 different things. And I kind of think really big sometimes. Sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes a bad thing. And in this situation, it turned out to be a good thing because I thought that people would pay like $5, $10, $20, but I ended up putting an option for $2,000 and $5,000. Like $2,000 means you come to New York City and you get to sing on a track with me, like background vocals. I had some like crazy big things. I was like, no one's going to do this. Yeah. So people did it. And I had no idea who was on my list, but there were a couple of Superfans that were like, oh my God, my daughter would love to do this, or she's studying it. So I ended up just emailing my list and saying, hey, I'm doing this thing. And, you know, once a week for several weeks, I would focus on one of those levels. So I started with the $10 one, and I said, here's what you get with the $10, and like why it meant a lot to me, blah, blah, blah. So I would get some $10 things. And then the next email was about the $50 level or the 100, whatever. And I did that all the way up to the $5,000 level, and I ended up getting that. So that was in 2010, 11, and that ended up raising $20,000 that time. And that was all just through a PayPal button on my website. The second time I did it was 2016 when I did a duet record where everyone was, every song was co-written, and I think 9 out of the 11 of them are actually duets with the co-writer. So I have Ari Hurstan on there, and Toby Lightman, and Brian DeVoe, who's in the band 9 Days, and just like really great people. And so I was like, you know what, I want to do this the right way, because there's some great people on this, people I've wanted to write with, people I've written with before, and wanted to finally put something out with. So I was like, let's try this again, except this time I did it through Pledge Music. I had Benji Rogers, who founded Pledge Music, and I had him on my podcast. And so when he was talking about Pledge, I was like, all right, I should probably do this and like have him on my podcast. So they were really, really great and really helped me set up something that looked really easy, and they have great direction for how to create a killer video and all that stuff. So I did the same thing, and ended up raising around $12,000 through that. And then, and I tell this story a lot, and I have this on a blog post, but I have a voice student who's 92 years old that found me online because he's really good with his iPad in the area, and he asked me if I could teach him voice lessons, which I don't do a lot. And so when I moved into my house where I live, up in the Hudson Valley, New York, like 5 years ago, he's like, I think you're in the area. Like, so I started teaching him lessons, and then I realized that he wanted to make a World War I CD, and then he sang all these World War I songs, and then I would bring my little like travel mic and my computer to his apartment because he's in like an assisted living place, and we like made CDs there. So he's got a couple records out now, and I think just like who I was being with him had him be like, all right, so what's up with you now? And I'm like, I'm raising money for my next record. He's like, well, how far do you have to go? I'm like, well, I've raised 12. I'm hoping for 20. He's like, well, how's 10? I was like, $10? That's really nice. Thank you so much. That helps you to know. 10,000. I was like, what? Come again? So the dude wrote me a $10,000 check, so that was a $22,000. And he's like, I follow your emails. I read all your emails. I know what you're up to. And we don't really talk a lot. We usually talk about his thinking. Like, you get him, he's down to business. He was a history teacher in the Bronx. He's like, it's kind of like no BS with him. And I started crying. He was like, for God's sake, it's just money. What else am I going to do with it? Like, So I feel like, because he was on my email list for 5 years and was getting my updates and knew what I was up to, and there was a way I was being with him that was really authentic in person as well as in my emails. So I think he knew that there was a consistency there, and that he was investing in a career that I was really passionate about. So I attribute that 10,000 to my email list as well, in addition to just being great with him. So that fan funding campaign was $22,000. So
right.
all really through my email list, and like, yes, the most recent one I was more on social media. In 2010, I was not super social media savvy. 2016 and 17, I was, posting on Facebook, but I didn't run any ads. I didn't do anything like that. I just kind of like kept posting it. And I don't know how much it would have been nice to track. Now I track everything. When someone clicks on anything, I can tag that, like what the source was. But then I'm pretty sure that like most of the contributions came from the email versus the Facebook stuff. So, so it's just, I was really consistent with my email list. When I stopped touring 5 years ago, I definitely dropped off the face of the planet for like 5, 6, 7 months. And and just real about it. Like, I would write them back and be like, hey, you're still on this list. There's an unsubscribe button if you don't want to be, but I really appreciate that you're a stand from my career. And that's always changing, and I'm going to update you on what that looks like now. And so instead of just being like, hey, I have a new CD for sale, like showing up out of nowhere, I kind of have to re-engage them. And my email course that I have talks a lot about re-engaging fans or people that haven't even opened an email recently. There are ways to get them to open and get them to do something so that they are then connected with you. As soon as they click something, you have a relationship, especially if the link they click on goes to the thing it's supposed to. There's a trust that's automatically built. There's a little psychology behind. When you ask someone to click on something and they do, you become an authority. They're more likely to click on things later. So there are ways to kind of get that going. And I think a lot of musicians that go into these phases of like, they go writing for a year or they go on tour and they forget about writing on their email list. There are ways to like set it up so that you can have something automatically go out once a month. And there are also ways to just say, hey, I know I haven't been in touch. Like, here's why and here's what's up, and being real about it and being, in the voice of your brand. And that's something I did since I started my email list, which was started in 2004 when I did my first tour. And I knew right off I don't know where I had heard it, but I knew right off the bat that I should have select emails. And I'm really glad I did because that was like the time of MySpace, and I really am grateful that I started collecting those emails when I did. So yeah, it's a long game, emails, and it's not about selling a couple CDs every month, although that's definitely like a plus. And it's not about getting a couple new followers every month. But I think when you're talking about all this stuff, you've got like CDs and merch and here's my Spotify playlist and here's this and follow me here and all that stuff. There's all these things you can invite your viewers to do, but you also want to tell your story over time so that they can really get to know you and get invested in your career, however it changes. So then when you do make a big ask like, hey, I'm raising $20,000. Who wants to help out here? Who wants to be part of this process? It doesn't feel weird, and people are like, well, yeah, of course, I've been part of it already. So
right.
I think that's why it worked. So, yeah.
Definitely. So I think there was some great takeaways there. One, just the idea of a super fan, because I think we all have heard about the 1,000 true fans theory. And, it sounds great, right, when we talk about some of the examples that go around, like Amanda Palmer, for example, or in the hip-hop world, they talk about Nipsey Hussle a lot because he decided to sell $1,000 mixtape, right? But for just the average guy starting out, it just seems, okay, no one's going to give me $2,000 or $5,000 or $10,000, but they do. They do. If people feel like they know you, you never know what someone else has or, what their motivations are. And so it's definitely important to let yourself shine through. It's not to just say, like you said, hey, here's my CD, buy it. But hey, this is what I'm up to. Hey, this month I'm traveling. I'm out in the mountains. I'm not doing anything. I just want to let you guys know what I'm up to. So then when you do make an ask, it's like an old family friend. Like, oh yeah, I know him. I know what he's doing. I know what he's going to do with what I give him. And so I'm going to help out. I think that's super important.
Yeah, it's really true. I mean, you think about, and this is from my advertising days, familiarity builds brand loyalty. So you look at Raisinets versus the Stop and Shop raisin chocolate covered raisins, and you're like, you don't even think twice. You go get the Raisinets because you are familiar with that. So the more people are familiar with you, the more likely they are to become a customer and then become a repeat customer. So that's a marketing thing. I mean, it really is a human thing. And honestly, the Superfans, the one that I had a fan's daughter come to New York City and she sang on a track that I had done a house concert at their house. So that relationship was super solid, right?
Right.
House concerts are great, and not necessarily going to strangers' houses, but reaching out to your fan list and being like, hey, I'm doing a season of house concerts. Who would love this kind of music? Here's some testimonials. Here's a video. Give them what they need. We'll get on a phone call and we'll create your perfect concert, what it looks like. And I did a whole bunch of those, and those people that I met at those concerts, became closer to the Superfans. And it was actually not even the host's daughter. It was someone who was at the concert that was a friend of the host. So, that person became like, someone who gave me 4 to 5 figures of money over time, and that's huge. So I ended up taking that daughter who's now in college. I took her to the Grammys this year.
Nice.
Like I got a +1. My husband couldn't go because he travels in the winter. And, I took I took my sister last year. This was the second time I had a ticket and was a voting member on the, able to show up. And I was like, oh, that feels like an appropriate thank you. And she, she's studying music in college, so blah, blah, blah. It all was very, very appropriate, and they were really grateful. But like I said, it's a long-term relationship that you're building with one person at a time. And yes, when you're writing those emails, it feels like you're writing to a lot of people. That is one of the biggest mistakes, honestly, I see from musicians is they're like, hey, guys. And, like, that's how you start your email. But you really want to be writing it like you're writing it to your ideal fan. You need to know who that is and the language to use with them and, like, have it feel intimate, even though it is a mass email. And people know that, but the more personal you can get in that, the less and less it's going to matter that it's a group email or mass email, whatever. Right.
And so for someone who's just getting started, do you have any tips for building that email list initially?
Before you even build it, I would say have it set up really well. Like have your welcome email and its whole series emails written and automated. Use a program like MailChimp there's constant content. There's like a bajillion different programs you can use that allow you to automate your emails. It's going to make your life way easier. So have some of those series already written before you start trying to get people to sign up. Because as soon as you have people sign up, you're like, oh my God, I have 500 people and I need to write them something. What do I write? But just introduce yourself over several emails, a couple every 3 to 4 days, and then start to spread them out one every 2 weeks. So do the work first, and then when you're set up and the technology is set up and it's on your website and looks good and you know that the link to download the free song or whatever you're giving away is all set up, then I would say you can start to do things. If you're touring, to me, it's really easy. You just announce it all the time. Make sure you have several different lists in the audience that you pass around. Don't be wonky about talking about an email list. Everyone knows that you have one, and if they like your music and they like you, then they're going to want to follow you. So don't be worried about asking about it. So that's if you're touring. I think definitely ask for emails. And I think online, it's something you can post once a week at least on all your social sites. Be like, hey, I've got some stuff coming up soon. I want you to be the first to know about it. I honor your email, and that's why I'm giving you away. Not a lot of people need a free MP3 right now, but it's more about the gesture. Right. I honor that you're giving me this email. I'm giving you this thing that is also important to me. I give a bundle of songs. I give one song from every CD I've done. Mm-hmm. So they get a zip file, and, it may be a little outdated. There may be other things that you can give away, but it really is saying, I honor that you're giving this email to me. So you can do that online. I would say don't be afraid. Don't just post it once, because the chances of A, someone seeing it at the time that you post it are slim, and B, if you do it once a week, you're not going to annoy people. I know a musician that emailed, Facebook messaged every single one of his Facebook friends asking to sign up, and he got I think 70% of the people he wrote signed up for his email list. That sounds like torture to me, but there's definitely a way to do that. You can just run some Facebook ads. Definitely target musicians that are like you. If you like this person, then you like me. Here's a free song. Blah blah. So there's different ways to do that. I cover all this in my email course, so that's my shameless plug. But if you're just getting started out, you want to know who you are, you want to know who your ideal fan is. There's some stuff to do before just hitting the ground and running. You'll be able to run faster if you set yourself up right.
Nice. And so you don't have to feel any shame, because this was my next question. I wanted you to tell us about the Rock Your Email List program.
Kind of what I've been saying. I created an acronym because I like letters, so it's stages. So you go through all the stages of email. Essentially, you start with this strategy, why do you want an email list? What do you want it to do for you? How can it serve your career? Then we tackle the technology. So I do I share my screen and I do some demos of a bunch of different programs so you can sort of see how to get set up. strategy, technology, A, awareness. People need to know you have a list. So I sort of talked about that a little bit already. So it's how to do that online, how to do that offline. G is growing or gathering. Like once you have all your friends and family on, like how do you keep growing that list beyond the friends and family? And especially if you're not touring, what are different ways to do that? SPNGE, engagement. This is where we create all of the content. The idea is that you do the course before you actually go out there. So you want to make sure you have all these things in place before you actually start telling people about this. But engagement is like we create the welcome series. I like walk you through what the 4 things that need to be in a welcome email. That's also an article that is on my blog. But and then the whole series that follows, how to do nurture series, meaning letting them get to know you when you're not selling anything. And then when you have something to sell, what does that look like? How do you do that authentically without sounding like a salesman? And it fits right in. And like the spoiler alert is part of that is how you set that up in your welcome series. So I go through all these different series and how to create the emails for it, and then how to set that up. And then the last one is stages, is sell. I wish it was an M, but staging didn't really work. But monetization is really the word there. How to really appropriately sell, so it sort of picks up on that engagement element, and also how to sell small things like CDs. Can you sell CDs every month? And then how to have the bigger conversations, like once every few years when you're doing a fan funding campaign. Or, I mean, I had my mailing list. I asked them if anyone had unused airline miles because my band got invited to play in this Swiss festival, and at the time I could not afford to fly four dudes and myself over to Switzerland, and we ended up getting enough miles. I had to pay for like transfer fees, but I got miles from fans that got I think 3 out of 5 of us over there, 3 out of 4 of us. I can't. Yeah. So I have a blog post about that. But I mean, I was just like, let's see what my fans have. So there can show up in other ways, the monetization, right? And so how to sort of make those apps and all that stuff. So it kind of covers everything. The idea is that you're set up and you have the strategy and you understand and can do it on your own by the end of it. And it's pretty complete. And it's like one of the things I'm really, really proud of. And kind of, I had looked for something that was out there, and there are no email courses for musicians out there. So I did a lot of studying. I got asked to speak on a panel or moderate a panel at South by Southwest, and that when I got asked to do that last year, I went down a rabbit hole of email marketing techniques. I went to a digital marketer conference in San Diego. I got certified as an email marketing specialist. Like when I say rabbit hole, I'm like deep in, I'm like totally got into it and dorked out on email. And I was like, all right, let's take all these cool tools that no one in the music industry is talking about. And I don't know why. Like people are still saying that newsletters once a month is the thing. Like now newsletter is now a 4-letter word.
Right.
It's not a thing. So that's the course. And you can get it at inthekey.co/email course.
Okay, cool. So that sounds like an amazing course. And you're right. I've been studying the business for, I guess formally since 2011 when I had my first label internship. And it was weird because I was working for a label, and that was back when social media strategy was just, we're just going to post all the time, post links to all of our projects, right? And then so that kind of morphed into me studying at Berkeley, and that's when I learned about tools like you were talking about, like Pledge Music and Noise Trade, and there was this kind of underworld of digital marketing platforms built for musicians. But then you realize that like a lot of them aren't as robust as their counterparts that are built for Susan with the hair salon. And so it's true that it's difficult for a musician to find tools and resources that are going to be relevant to them and also going to kind of keep up with the times. And so this is great that you're putting this out here.
Yeah, well, thanks. I appreciate that.
Well, no problem. So again, just let's shout out your socials, everywhere people can follow you, and your blog, and of course the course as well.
Sure. So the course is at inthekey.co/email course. You can also go to inthekey.co/results. That takes you to the homepage of everything, where you can find my podcast and you can find my blog. You can find a bunch of other courses that might cater to something that you're looking for. So that's inthekey.co/results, and you can access everything there. My favorite platform right now for social media is Instagram, and I'm CBE Music there. I'm CBE Music on Facebook. Twitter I'm CBE. And that's funny because a lot of people think I'm Chris Brown Entertainment, so I get a lot of like, yo, did you drop a new beat, yo? And I'm like, I did, and it's a piano chick pop with a shaker. And I write back to all of them, and most of the people are like pretty chill and like think it's pretty funny.
Right.
Some people think I'm in an airport in Kentucky because I think there's a little teeny airport that has the code CBE, and sometimes someone's like, I'm picking up my sister at CBE. I'm like, no, you're not. But everywhere else, Instagram is my favorite place. I'm kind of getting my groove on in Instagram, so that would be my favorite. And you will see some pictures of my basset hound.
Okay.
So,
That's
good job.
funny. That's so cool, because when I found you on Twitter, I was like, how did she get CBE from Chris Brown? Like, she just happened to get that before he did. That's cool.
Yeah, I'm waiting for him to be like, yo, I'll pay you $1 million for that handle. And I'll be like, okay. Like, I'm just waiting. There's also a cannabis bureau of something that's out in Colorado. I get a lot of like pot-related tweets. And then there's a Calgary something. I get another thing. Oh, Board of Education. The Calgary Board of Education in Canada. They always are like, there's some parents that are like, why isn't CBE like dealing with the lunches better? And I'm like, dude, I don't eat lunch. I do brunch. So that's usually but like that, there's some other ones. And I'm like, I'm happy. I always say, like, I'm happy to give you my thing for a tiny little fee.
Right.
So, Chris Brown Entertainment, if you're listening, I'm open. Have your people call my people.
Well, that is great. So I'll make sure I link to all of your profiles as well as the website in our show notes. And I want to thank you again for doing the podcast.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Oh, no problem. All right, so that's going to wrap it up for this week's interview. I hope you guys were paying attention, taking notes. She gave us a lot of amazing insights on how to prepare your email list for success and how to really engage your fans and discover who your super fans are on the road to success, because it's really easy to build that relationship if you're thinking about it. But if you're not, you're going to end up like so many other people who just neglect their fan base and their email list. And then when they turn around and they need something, there's no one there to support them. So follow Cheryl's tips. And again, I'm going to leave everything that she talked about in the description, all the links to her resources so that you can check out her Rock Your Email List program if that's something you're interested in. So next week, we're talking to music producer Jedi Master. Love that name. We're talking to him about how he got started. We talked about streaming services and a bunch of other things. But if you're waiting for that, obviously, hit the subscribe button and you won't miss out. So until next time, peace.